And we're live. How are you, people? Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, episode 136, recorded as always live on a Tuesday night at 8 o'clock GMT on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. And you're listening to the dulcet tones of Matt Phillips, creator of Untitled.com and host of the Sports Therapy Association podcast. So, yes, here we are, a new month. We had our Ask Tim first of the month session last week, and that was a chance for a soft tissue therapist to ask Tim Dicey, founder of Rehab My Patient, any questions at all to do with the industry. But this now is the start of a 3-part focus on mental health and learning disability. Very excited this month. A lot of people have been asking. We've dabbed in the topic here and there in the past episodes, and indeed our guest for tonight, James Chapman, has been on the show I think 3 times now, as well as being a fantastic speaker at Therapy Expo last November. But this month, the rest of this month, is now devoted to mental health and learning disability and improving our knowledge of it as soft tissue therapists. And just to let you know, as it's the first one, like I say, we're going to have James Chapman of allaboutthemind.com, an instructor for MHFA, Mental Health First Aid. He's going to be with us very shortly. Then next week, which will be February the 21st, episode 137 is going to be with Alistair Beverley of theldphysio.com, where the LD stands for learning disability. Really looking forward to that. I really recommend that you guys, if you listen to the podcast, try and come along to that. If it fits into your time zone and at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, you can be free, then do try and come along. It's too late for this one, obviously, if you listen to the podcast, unless you've got some time machine. But for next week, if it's not the 21st yet, then do try and join us because there's going to be some questions on that. It's going to be a fantastic episode, eye-opening. And then on the 28th, episode 138 is going to be with our very own Ryan Smith, STA rep, and Jack Coward. Ryan and Jack are both creators and hosts of Let's Be Frank podcast, which is a mental health awareness podcast that gives men a platform and a safe space where they can stand up and speak out about their life struggles and mental health challenges. So that's going to be amazing as well. Had Ryan on the show before, but having Ryan and Jack together talk about the podcast and what they're trying to achieve and what they have achieved is going to be an amazing opportunity as well. So that's what we've got for the month. As always, people are joining us live and coming in the room now. We've got Glenn Murphy here saying, shake, rattle and roll, guys. There we go. Thank you, Glenn. Some of us will be shaking and I'm sure you'll be rattling a little bit. So thank you very much for joining us. Brian Huckley is also here as well. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us. And that's the joy of coming and joining us live, is because you can network, you can meet other soft tissue therapists, maybe from your region. You can get a little bit to know how the Sports Therapy Association works, etc., etc. And when you say a message, I can bring it up on the screen, which will show your fantastic, beautiful features like Brian Huxley here. And also, if you want to, your logo, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to hang out with sports soft tissue therapists. Lindsay Penn is also here now. Fantastic. So people are coming into the live lounge. Right then, so I think I've been talking for far too long already. So we'll start off this month's focus on mental health and learning disability with tonight's guest, Mr. James Chapman. Hey, James, how you doing?
Hi, Matt. Really good, thanks. Yeah, happy to be here.
I can see. I hope this hour serves you well. You've been in the struggles a little bit, haven't you, with family upsets and stomach bugs and all this sort of thing, which is going around. So thank you for joining us. We've been talking a little bit off air. Now, we won't kind of treat all of the listeners here to the gastrointestinal diversity that you're appreciating in your household at the moment. But yeah, I appreciate you giving up your time, man. Really good to see you again.
Thank you.
And it was lovely to have you along at Therapy Expo, which seems quite so long ago now, back in November. It was wonderful to give people who were there a chance to listen to you and everything you've done. So thanks again for that. Right, so tonight, you're opening the show for a whole month or 3 weeks worth of putting the much needed magnifying glass on mental health and learning disability. For people who aren't aware, it's very difficult, isn't it, with someone of your length of your experience, but elevator pitch, kind of a minute on what you do and how you may be able to help soft tissue therapists in the capacity of mental health.
Okay, thanks. So, so I'm a mental health first aid trainer for Mental Health First Aid England. I'm also a plenary speaker on race and ethnicity for MHFA England. Along with that, I do diversity and inclusion trainings, and I've been a massage therapist, sports massage therapist, and myofascial therapist, and yoga therapist for almost 20 years. So I've been doing that in kind of general practice, I suppose, general kind of clinics, but also mainly working for mental health charities, drug rehabs and stuff like that. So a lot of background working in mental health, and actually that's kind of how I got into all of this, through poor mental health and having massage for many years before. I was misdiagnosed with cervical spondylosis, but a lot of physical pain, a lot of psychological pain as well, having regular massages, and something that just helped me so much. So when I gave up my previous life in the city, I just felt like I wanted just to study massage, because it was just so amazing, and here I am. And I think over the years, I studied psychotherapy as well early on in 2003, which gave me a lot of really vital skills that have helped me as a therapist, to create boundaries, to manage my own stress, to be able to signpost people. And mental health first aid training that I do is very good for spotting the signs, having conversations, having boundaries, being able to actually have conversations, but without getting that emotional entanglement. And actually, from coming up and speaking with people at the Therapy Expo, you know, I kind of really, because mental health is so broad, it's like, you know, we're not going to be, we're therapists in a different way. We're not mental health professionals. We don't need to be, but we do really need to be able to have those conversations and develop listening skills so that we can signpost. Because I teach on some yoga trainings as well. I teach yoga teachers, and I was doing a teacher training for one of the biggest yoga training companies earlier on in January, and they asked me to do half an hour on mental health in with my diversity and inclusion module. And I was like, half an hour on mental health, what can I do? You know, the main thing is to be able to have conversations and develop some listening skills. So yeah, I think it's really important as therapists that we can, you know, if people come to therapy, they might have some MSK stuff going on, some musculoskeletal problems, but you know, they get on the couch or they get in the room, and then you find out they're not sleeping, this is happening, that's happening, and sometimes you can be left carrying loads of stuff, and if you're giving advice that's out of your scope of practice, you know, this can be, I think, really damaging for the client and also for you as a therapist, because then you go home and you're like, did I say the right thing? Should I have said that? And you have that emotional entanglement, which can be really draining.
It was definitely. It was, your name came up last week actually when we were talking to Tim Allardyce. We had a very good question. Somebody sent it in to Matt at the STA136, and they said, now that we're kind of embracing the biopsychosocial model, and we realise that we shouldn't be, you know, we realise now what structuralism over kind of dependency on posture and the structural side of things. Does that mean we should be doing more training on to prepare ourselves for understanding the psychosocial part of things, like with psychology and stuff like that? And your name, it was a wonderful segue to say yes is the first answer to that question. We do need to know more about it. It's all very well saying you have to, you know, ask the person how there is and look at the yellow flags, but what do you do with that information? How do you know about boundaries and that sort of stuff? So your name came up, and that's exactly what, to some extent, MHFA provides, isn't it? It's giving therapists more language, ability to listen, relate, refer on if necessary, rather than just kind of muddling away through, which could do more harm to yourself and also to your client. That makes sense?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's about often it's about signposting, and you know, and being able to, you know, someone tells you something, and just being able to say, thanks for telling me that. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I can help you. Have you ever thought of speaking to X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever it might be? And then giving robust information, you know, the bona fide sources to send them to, and also supporting them in that sometimes, because I mean, it depends on your relationship with that person, but often it can be kind of scary for people, and to have someone to sit there and say, well, actually, should we have a look at some links and see what's on the NHS website or something like that? Can be really useful, because often, again, if it's someone not sleeping, if they've noticed changes in their appetite and stuff like that, they're going to need to go to their GP, and if there's if they come and they start talking about psychological problems as well, then they need to maybe speak to the GP about that as well. And I think there's so much stigma and discrimination around mental health. There's a lot of fear as well over saying the wrong thing and having to fix things, which we don't have to do. It's really, when you delve into mental health and different diagnosis, there's so much overlap on symptoms, and it's really not our place to get involved in thinking, oh, maybe they've got this, maybe they've got that, or whatever. But just to have some general understanding, because mental health affects us all. One in four people will have poor mental health in every year. So it's something that's,
saw that stat. It's quite incredible. I'm just going to ask you, because people listening to the podcast are hearing you at this moment moving around quite a lot. So I don't know if you can sit on your hands, or you're so expressive and you're moving around and so passionate about the topic.
What I'm going to do is
every time you move, we're getting further in. There's points where it's beautiful. I can hear you, like you sound like I can't remember the name of the guy I was going to.
I'm going to hold my mic in my hand.
Oh wow, that is Wogan. That is beautiful. That is. You can do that, then I'm loving it. Okay, thanks for that. It ties in again wonderfully. It was last week. Tim Allardyce said he's working with a team now. He set up for people who are suffering from long COVID complications, and he said it's shocking. There's some people in horrific situations, and he mentioned that he had a chat with somebody, young lad, who, when they're going through the questions, mentioned yes, he's thinking of suicide on a daily basis. And that suddenly became, I think it was Gary who had joined us last week, said, how do listeners feel if somebody said that to you? One, is it something you're going to take home with you? Is it something that's going to run around your mind and maybe be destructive in that sense? And two, how would you deal with it in terms of the person in front of you, both strategically signposting them, and two, being able to talk about it but not too much? So again, we referred that and segued that onto tonight, because it is something, especially in this day and age, sadly, I'm going to sound like an old man now, but I think things are getting worse. There seems to be more mental health issues, maybe because of our pace of life, because of expectations, because of the internet, all sorts of reasons, because of world struggles over. There's more likelihood that you are going to have to deal with people coming into your clinic with mental health problems which need to be sorted. Is it getting worse, or am I just being is it because I'm getting older?
Yeah, no, there are new challenges. I think in the past, poor mental health has always been there, and I think I'm thinking of I'm in my 50s. My parents grew up in the Second World War. Their parents fought. One of my grandparents fought in both World Wars. Their parents were Victorians. So there's a lot of trauma that's been passed down, and I think in the past people just didn't speak about it. Now I think that there are different challenges. We've got the internet, which can be fantastic, but it brings with it a lot of cyberbullying, a lot of more pressure from the media. People have their phones, they rely on those. I think socially things have changed as well. People don't live so much. I grew up in a small town outside London. I don't know how many people that I went to school with still live in that town because it's very expensive. Where I live in London now, people are moving away because it's expensive. And, whereas you might have grown up and had your grandparents a few doors down and your aunts and uncles and everyone around, now people are really dispersed. And I think it's harder now. There's, people are on 0 hours contract, you can go to university, you can rack up 40 grand's worth of debt at uni, and then maybe get a living wage job if you're lucky, so whereas in the past, you might have been able to get a job for life, buy a house, and so things have changed. And one of the stats that really is really concerning is since 2012, suicide in women under 25, so women and girls, has gone up by 93.8%. 93.8%, and largely because of social media. So people ask me often, is it because people are more aware of mental health? Are people reporting it more? The stats around suicide don't lie, and drug-related deaths have gone up a lot. I should have sent to you actually, but I live in Finsbury Park in North London, which is quite well to do now. It used to be quite rough, but it's quite well to do. It's very expensive around here to buy a house. And I noticed there were a lot of cars driving past my house one morning, and that indicated to me that on the main road there was a problem, maybe a road traffic accident or something. So I googled. I went onto Twitter as the best source for any news straight away, and I just googled put in Twitter search Finsbury Park, and this image came up, and I should send it to you actually. It said weed lord, and it had cocaine, THC, mushrooms, edibles, ketamine, all these meth, and it had Finsbury Park, it had Muswell Hill, Crouch End, Highgate, Hampstead. Nice, very expensive. You want a 4-bedroom house, even in Finsbury Park, it's going to be 1.3 million, and the Snapchat and the Telegram and WhatsApp, and this was the first thing that came up, and it's worrying, because substance abuse is a big problem. And the fact that it's there and it's being advertised on Twitter, this isn't the dark web, this was on a Monday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, and this is coming up, and this is like numbers you can phone, and someone will come around on a little scooter and deliver all kinds of really strong drugs, and it's really worrying. And that was something that just didn't happen 10, 15, 20 years ago, definitely, so.
And there seems to be this problem, and because kids are never going to listen to adults. Adults are the only ones who've got the experience of seeing how things are changing. And like, I can tell now, like I teach and I've got students, and they're younger, they're in their kind of 20s, some of them a bit younger, and they're talking. I mean, now everyone's talking about, for example, the other day we were talking about, and I got the name of the website wrong. Is it Only Friends? Something like that. Is it Only Friends?
Only Fans.
Only Fans, that's it. I remember everyone laughed at me because I got it wrong, and I thought, well, I'm pretty glad I got it wrong. It kind of shows that I haven't been there.
That's really lovely, Only Friends.
Yeah, I thought that'd be a nicer version of it. But anyway, it's Only Fans, isn't it? Yeah, and they were kind of like quoting it again. It was probably ad verbatim, and it was like they were suggesting the amount that their friends were making, and sisters of their friends, and you're seeing like this being sold on Google of how much these girls can make. But this must, even though somebody under the age of 40 is probably not going to agree with it, no one's going to convince me that this is a healthy career choice, putting yourselves in a webcam and selling your body, which is pretty much the only thing which you can hold onto yourself and not sell, as opposed to your time and all that sort of stuff. And you're doing it maybe for a few years and earning lots of money. That's got to be troublesome later on, not just for you, but the people around you and your family, all that sort of stuff. But now it's becoming the norm, and there seems to be an ever increasing amount of young girls who are doing that as a living, making it as a career choice. And that's just one up. I mean, it's just as bad Instagram, where people are just, it's just horrific. It scares the hell out of me. But how do adults like yourself, how do you help younger people who are always going to have that rebellion kind of, oh, you guys don't understand it, you're not hip, you're not cool? How does the education be passed down?
That's a really good question, actually. And I think a lot of that, this objectification of women, porn is just available like everywhere. And it's not like, what were they called, Razzle or whatever. When I was a kid, you'd kind of, you know, like your mate's dad's house, you'd have a look, you'd have something under the bed, you'd have a quick look and a bit of a giggle. It's really like serious stuff. And I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but it's a massive amount of young women are sent unsolicited dick pics and stuff like that. It's a huge amount. It's like a massive amount. And then going off to do that. And I think a lot of it is adolescence is a really critical time in young person's development. So there's dopamine and serotonin, which kind of go hand in hand all through early development. And then as young people hit puberty, dopamine spikes up, and it spikes up in a massive way. And it does that so that young people take high risk decisions for little rewards. And they do that because they need to break free of the family, they need to interact with their peers, because that's why they kind of withdraw, and the friends are the most important thing, and they get all their validation because they have to learn how to succeed as adults through trial and error with their peers. And this is why in adolescence, addiction is the most common time for addiction to occur, depression, psychosis, behavioral problems with autistic spectrum disorders will come up in that time. And this is why it's really, really important that young people have connection. You know, they have people that are going to create bonds, help improve or like improve their self-esteem and their feelings of self-worth. Because at that age, it's very easy to kind of get in with the wrong crowd. I did it, you know, and go off with people because you don't feel that you're valued enough, and you're never going to be this and you're never going to be that. And, you know, I think with so like talking to young people, understanding that they're going through this, and it's not because they're just being buggers, excuse my language, but it's there, it's wide into all of us. We all went through this, and I think how you come out of that depends on how strong those connections that you had, you know, how much love you felt to your family, to the people around you, whether you had good friends around you and you felt valued and you felt that you belonged somewhere. I think it's very easy to kind of fall through that and end up on the wrong side. And then you've got charmers like this Andrew Tate, who's who's everywhere, and preaching misogyny and women are property. And this is 2023, and I do a lot of work with schools, and the amount of teachers that are like, I've got boys who are really into Andrew Tate, and they believe in this matrix stuff, and Andrew Tate, that's what he's been doing. How he got his money was through women, trapping women and getting them to do porn, basically.
Anyway, so it's all and of course, and also these people that are so tricky. These people are still, I've always put massage therapists and sports therapists, even any healthcare professional even, is going to see these people because they are people with everyday lives, and they're going to be coming into your clinic. I'm not saying that if you find out that somebody does do something which you think could be harmful profession-wise, you should step in and say, you shouldn't be doing that, young lady. That could get into all sorts of problems. But I think it's being able to refer out, because people, like you say, put somebody on a couch and start massaging them even, and we've seen it happen before. People open up their emotions, and if people are putting on a brave face and doing this and really not liking what they're doing, but they're getting the money, chances are when they do come and see you when they're in pain or something, because that last 2 weeks of pole dancing just wasn't working and they've hurt themselves, they may suddenly start crying or opening up or sharing, because that therapeutic alliance can be really powerful. So I guess in all these examples, it's being able to listen when they do open up, and being able to refer on as necessary, and just being that point of contact, part of that support which maybe they lack elsewhere. Big responsibility, I think, particularly for soft tissue therapists, because these people are going to come to you through the door in more and more quantities.
Definitely. And I had so I saw someone recently, someone that works in the art world, and very, very lovely person, and and they started opening up about an illness, a serious, very serious illness that their child had had when they were very young, some years ago, and said, you know, I don't think I'll ever recover from that. And that was really touching. And this was someone that came to me and they had pain, probably psoas or something like that, I don't know, but in that kind of area. And then suddenly we're talking about this, you know, and I'm a father, I've got children, and I think when someone says something to us that's painful, you know, like our normal chit chat response, call normal conversation, someone says something, you say something back. Someone says something painful to you, you say something to try and fix it because it touches something in you, and it's like, it's uncomfortable, and it's like, I don't want to go there, that feels bad, and I'm going to try and make them feel better, or try and make myself feel better. And that, actually having that connection is good, that feeling, but it's what you do with it, you know, because if you have that feeling, like if someone says something painful for me and I feel it in my chest and it's uncomfortable and it's painful, that means I've made a connection with them. But if I try and just fix it or say something to make them feel better or whatever, that's probably not going to be helpful for them. What I need to do is think about my frame of reference and say, wow, okay, I've got this feeling now, but this is my frame of reference. What in my being is invoking that feeling and responding to that, or excuse me, reacting to that. I have to be very careful how I react to that, and whether I just want to fix it, or because that's a natural thing, you know. And this is why we're going to look at active listening later. It's called active listening because you have to do it actively. Our default mode is the chit chat mode. So to actively listen, you've got to actively do it and hold on to your judgments. And I always ask people, can we be non-judgmental? I don't know if anyone in the chat
around,
knows if you can be non-judgmental. Please tell us, because it's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, the active listening we could jump to now. I'm fortunate enough, I'm doing a course with Dr. Gary Mendoza, who also spoke, and that's about motivational interviewing and behavior change. And last Sunday we did it, and it was all about active listening and how to change that natural tendency we do have to speak too quickly, to not pause, leave some silence, techniques on how to just reply with a reflection, different types of reflection to help that kind of conversation go along. So it's amazing stuff, but it is stuff that some people are born with, and we don't know why. They just seem to have that natural knack of doing it. But it is something which, if you haven't got, then you can learn. And I remember one thing he said, which was really interesting, which stuck with me, was we've got this idea that to show empathy, you need to have suffered what that person is talking about. That's the only way you can show empathy. And he said, no, that's rubbish. That's not what empathy is about at all. You know, empathy is made up of other factors, as being able to listen, being able to reflect in such a way that the person understands you're listening, and you don't need to have done and suffered exactly what the person is doing. It might be advantageous, but it's not the definition of empathy. So yeah, active listening. Let's move this on to them. So we're in a scenario then where people with mental health problems, and we've already said that a quarter of the UK experience some kind of mental health problem in the course of a year. So in theory, a quarter of our clients could be suffering. They come through. Maybe let's start off with red flags or yellow flags or both. Whereas we should start thinking, right, we need to switch on my active listening now. I should be doing all the time. But what are some red flags or yellow flags that conversation should be pursued a little bit to help that person?
Well, I think you know, if someone says something and obviously a red flag where there's no confidentiality is they're going to harm themselves or someone else, and then you need to, you know, you need to tell someone about that straight away. Yellow flags. I think with yellow flags, I was discussing this with another therapist the other day, and I think sometimes if you have that feeling that someone, you know, if they come to you for a treatment and they're kind of asking questions and you know, you don't kind of get the feeling that this treatment's going to help, and that actually they might need to see someone else, is to go with it. And you know, I've done that many times and actually said that I think you need to go to see somebody else. I don't think I can help you at this moment. And I think it's really important to to recognize that. It's difficult because obviously, you know, you want your clinic to be busy and, you know, you've booked out that time and that's money that's going to be lost. But I think if someone comes to see you and starts talking in a way that you think, you know, I don't know what's going on here. This doesn't seem like a straightforward case of plantar fasciitis or something like that. Then you know, you can use active listening skills, but you know, I think when it comes to, I don't know, someone saying something, I mean, people will talk about all kinds of stuff, and you know, when you need to, I think to signpost is when that happens, and not be afraid to do that. You know, it's to, like I said, it's like someone says something, thanks for telling me that. Have you thought of speaking to someone else about this? Have you spoken to your GP? And
I was going to ask, so what sort of, there's GP obviously, but should soft tissue therapists be forging relationships with what type of other healthcare professionals in the area? Is it like local clinics where they do psychoanalysis and CBT and all that sort of stuff, or who should we have cards or posters up about?
That's a really good question, actually. I think it's good to know what's around in your local area. There's a website called Hub of Hope. You know, if someone's speaking to you and I think they're clearly talking about distressing emotions and signs and symptoms that kind of maybe, for example, point to depression or something like that, I think it's good to say to them, look, you know, are you happy? Do you know what's going on here? You know, have you spoken to anyone about this? And then, yeah, point them in the way to GP, or that have you spoken to your local mind, and know what resources are around. And that actually, you know, just asking if there's help available, and there is help available, asking for help is a really positive thing. And I think for us as therapists to know that, just like with physical conditions, you know, mental health is, you know, people are likely to recover, and people do recover. With some mental health disorders, they might be for life, but you know, for example, the recovery rates for depression are really, really good. It's just getting people to treatment, and there's a lot of people who might come, had them many times. I worked with someone from a very famous boy band, and you know, oh, my shoulders, James, my shoulders, and I'd be treating his shoulders, thinking, I wish I had shoulders like this. These are like the shoulders of an 18-year-old with no worries. But to him, they were agonizing. And this, you know, this person's been through some stuff for sure. You know, people will come and present with that. And I think it's good to, I think we all, as human beings, you know, the clinical intervention, which is a good point actually, because the clinical intervention for mental health conditions is medication and talking therapies. And what we need to have is a community intervention, because the clinical intervention is really important that we signpost. But just as human beings, never mind therapists, you know, waiting times can be months and months and months. They can be years, you know. So I think we have to come together as people to be able to support people when they have poor mental health. And I'll give you a quick example. So I've been having a hard time the last few years, and I thought I could do with a bit of therapy. And I called up ICOPE, which is IAPT, is Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. So this is UK wide. It was brought out in 2008, or in England actually, 2008. It's the most ambitious talking therapy program in the world. Fantastic. So I called up my local one. I live in Camden and Islington in London. And I spoke to this really lovely woman, it's an NHS service, and she said for less complex cases, the waiting time is 6 to 8 weeks, and more complex cases, which would be me, 9 months. It was goals focused, so I've got really good self-care skills, so it's not for me. I just kind of need someone to talk to, that kind of thing. So I did some research on this. She's amazing. She gave me a lot of low-cost places where I could get therapy in North London. Brilliant. And so I did some research, and last year 1.4 million people accessed the service. and only 300,000 completed it and saw improvement. So a huge amount of people dropped off, you know. And then I did a bit more research and I found out that the 6 to 8 weeks is for an assessment, and then it would be on average a month before treatment started after that, you know. So services are really, really stretched. They aim to increase the capacity. So we can signpost people and that's great. But I think as human beings, we need to come together and support people and to have knowledge around mental health and be able to say, yeah, people can recover, and to know what local services there will be. And actually massage plays a huge part in improving people's mental health. It's well documented. There's loads of scientific studies on it, and there's actually studies which say that giving massage helps with your mental health as well. I don't know if you knew that.
I think I heard it from you before, from maybe a therapy expert or somewhere. Yeah, there's some wonderful studies now. I was going to say, actually, because again, looking at it from both a business perspective and the natural altruism we've got to helping people, maybe we should be forging relationships more with local clinic with Mind and that, because at the right time, a complementary kind of together massage sessions and whatever kind of counselling they're going to have at the same time at the right place might be double the benefit, because it has been shown that massage and just human touch can help with anxiety and depression. So but that made me think as well, we've got to know when, because there's going to be some times where we shouldn't really, well, two questions actually, Catherine Reimer has reminded me as well, but there's going to be times where we shouldn't be proceeding with this person in our clinic, because one, we need to try and make sure that they're going to get proper help, and whilst they're coming to see you, this might not be happening. And two, maybe there's a safeguarding issue as well. I mean, Catherine said, let me just scroll that back so people watching on YouTube can see that question on the screen. Catherine Ryder did actually say, would safeguarding be something that maybe needs linking more with mental health? I mean, how responsible are we as therapists to report something if we do hear somebody say either harming themselves or harming someone in their family or someone in the street? What's our responsibility legally? Do you know?
It's difficult, I think, because as therapists, I don't know whether there's a legal responsibility. I think there's definitely a moral responsibility. And I think every therapist, as Catherine, I think, said that, or someone has said, yes, Catherine's doing a safeguarding, needs to do safeguarding training. You know, I think you can get free safeguarding training generally from most local authorities. Not always. I've done level 3 adults and children because I work with mental health services companies, and I think it's safeguarding concerns are often a sign of poor mental health. You know, so they're very, very much linked, and I think we have a duty if we think an adult's vulnerable, if we think they're at risk, then we should report it to our local safeguarding officer, and the safeguarding officers will then decide whether there is a safeguarding concern or not. So I think it's fine to do that, because you're not going to get anyone in trouble or anything else. I think it's really important that we look after you. See someone on the street who's vulnerable, and part of the trainings that I do, we look at boundaries, and it's like, is it appropriate to go and say someone's having a psychotic episode, so they're having an altered reality, they're on the street, you might be there with your child or children, you know, and they look like they're in distress. Do you go and have a conversation with them? And it's like, well, depends on the age of your children. Personally, I've done it many times. I live close to a busy station. I'll go around to the station. Someone looks like they're in distress. Can you go? I've called the police or called the ambulance and said, because I think it's important that we, as people, do if we see someone that's in trouble, and services are there to help them, you know.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure, well, I'm sure actually Sports Therapy Association, and if you're not part of the STA, then probably your own professional association should have a safeguarding department. And they will always, I know the STA, if you're an STA member, then just email, for example, Gary at the STA.co.uk or admin at the STA.co.uk, or me, Matt at the STA.co.uk. And you can get advice on what to do with regards to whether you should put something in your notes to show what you've done if you have forwarded this information to somebody. Or so, yeah, if you're not sure about what to do, then contact your professional association, and somebody there should be appointed with looking after you and also the people you see to get some advice.
I think it's a good point, as actually to make some reflective notes anyway, always on, you know, on anything that concerns you, is to write it down.
Because again, to turn it around to the client actually being the person with mental health problems, this could affect your own mental health. If that person does tragically go and do something terrible and you didn't do anything, you thought, oh, he'll be okay. It's just not, I'm not going to see them again. That's going to come around and hit you hard if you feel guilt. So yeah, if only for that reason. Boundaries. You mentioned boundaries, and that reminded me. Yeah, talk to us a little bit more about boundaries.
So I suppose boundaries are really, where, like we've been talking about, where do I get involved? When do I report? How much do I say if someone says something, mentions some distress? How do I respond? Am I going out of my professional remit by offering advice and saying, oh, try some St. John's wort and I don't know, some Wim Hof breathing technique or something like that, which might work for you, but might be damaging for that person. It's like, well, as a sports therapist, is that my role to do that? And it's like, no, it's not. As a friend, yeah, that's fine. I think it's really, for me, it's been. I mean, I've been working as a therapist for many years with some very, very challenging clients, and the ability to say is either to maybe not say anything. We've had some stuff in the chat from Brian about active listening and just being able to hold the space and being able to reflect stuff back and really make it about them rather than you, letting them speak, but knowing that you haven't crossed any boundaries or any kind of got into emotional entanglements by saying the wrong thing. I think it's so important to be able to do, so that you can actually, right, okay, I've done this and I've done that, and I know exactly what I've done, and then you can kind of go home and leave that on the couch,
And this is stuff, I guess, that's covered in mental health first aid on the course, so people are equipped. Because I suppose legally you're not obliged to do it, but at least if you've got your MHFA, then does that kind of, I imagine, extend those boundaries and give you a certification which allows you to get a little bit more involved, or is it?
Yeah, it gives you a certificate, but I think it's more that it just it makes you more comfortable in having these conversations and being able to do that. And I think with the prevalence of mental health, and remember the cost of living crisis. I mean, the reason I've been having a hard time is because my landlord's been trying to sell my house, and the valuations I've had have been absolutely ridiculous. It's like, how do you afford to do that? So I've been suffering. I'm not going to be homeless. I might have to move further towards the edge of London or whatever. But I'm looking at renting a 3-bedroom house for £2,300 a month on the edge of London. Miles away from my kids' school, and and it's you think £2,300 a month, and this isn't someone who's going to be homeless or whatever. It's been very hard. So I think the coming months, with people's energy bills and everything else, I think everyone should really have these skills, definitely, and be able to have these conversations and look out for each other. I think it's so important.
So let's talk about some tools. I know that's something which you're very fond of sharing. And what are some tools that's keeping our focus on the therapists? And we know this is going to be a tricky year coming up ahead, as you mentioned, with bills and maybe people not having so much disposable income to go to a healthcare professional of some form. What are some tools then to help us with stress and to kind of keep an eye on our mental capacity?
Yeah. So really good question. So I thought, the stress container, I don't know whether anyone's familiar with that, but it's a really useful way of looking at stress. And I think stress is often seen as a badge of honor. We don't, we go through life and we just kind of take it on our backs, and kind of gets heavier and heavier, and we don't realize until something, snaps. So I think it's really important that we can sit down and actually look at our stress, be honest about it, look at what we've got in our life, what we've got evidence for, how we can manage that stress with the stuff that we can't do anything about, like, I don't know, some long-term health issue or cost of living and stuff like that. We can't really do a lot about it. Yeah, we can budget and do some other things, but and look at our stress signature. Notice the signs when we're under stress, and also who's got our back. And stress is a predictor and a risk factor for most mental health conditions and suicides. So we can, for ourselves, is actually a really powerful thing to think, right, what is in my stress bucket, which is the one of the tools I'm going to share. I had it was about 15 years ago, I had pericarditis. So the pericardium muscle holds the heart in the chest. Actually came on after stress. Like any muscle strain, impairs the function of the muscle. When the heartbeat increases, it felt like I was having a heart attack. And it was horrible. I put on about 10 kilos, awful. But it showed me just how stressful my life is. And I am one of these people, I have the attitude to stress. I'm like, bring it on. Come on, bring it on. I have problems with timekeeping, not because I'm lazy, because I'm always trying to do stuff. I just love life, and I don't have that thing of like, that's enough. So, someone would call me on my phone, good friend, I'd see their name, and I'd be like clutching my chest. I was like, wow, something unresolved in that relationship. Driving, had a little Golf at the time, whizzing around the back streets of London, sunroof music, love it. Couldn't drive. Not because of road rage, just someone driving a little bit too close to me. Like that, and when you go to change lanes, someone kind of cuts the distance a little bit. I wouldn't raise an eyebrow to that. But the physiological effects it was having on my body, the stress was there, so that showed me just how stressful my life is. And so it's really, I think one thing we don't do is look at how stressful life is. And I know as a therapist, I'm very lucky because I've got my mental health training. I don't rely on my therapies. I still do therapies like I used to, but I was just in a yoga center that I work at today, and half the therapy rooms are empty. There's people who have given up their shifts there because, and this is a really busy place in central London, a really good place to work, because people just haven't got that money. Everything's gone up. Oils have gone up. Wax has gone up. It's been a while since I bought couch roll, but that was really, really expensive. And people are spending less. So it's very, very, very difficult. So I think a good way for us to look after ourselves and our family is to look at stress container. So yeah, do you want to bring that one up? And
I could do. I do have an image here. If I bring up the right one, if I put it, is this one? Yeah.
Yeah.
If I put it on full so people can see it, they can still hear you. So you haven't got.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'll talk through that quickly. So we've got stress coming into the bucket, and on the bucket, it's a bit difficult to see, but it says how big is your bucket. Some people have stress buckets that are like massive. They're like inflatable jacuzzi, and they're kind of like, yeah, I'll paint your house for you and I'll babysit and nothing phases them. Other people have got a stress bucket it's the size of a shot glass, and you ask them like, oh, what sandwich would you like? And they're like, don't ask me about, just make me a sandwich, and how big your stress container is, your stress bucket, really depends on your life experiences and where you are in that moment, with the stuff that's been going on with my house and stuff. My stress bucket is pretty small at the moment, and stress comes into the container. So, for it's money stuff, work stuff, it's family stuff, it's, cost of renting a room or cost of couch roll, all of this stuff can go in there, there's other stuff as well which you might not have evidence for, like a bit of imposter syndrome. Sometimes did I do that right? So it's really good. So I've made this into a fillable form so people can print it out if they want, or just do it online. It's a fillable PDF, but to write down the stress that they've got in their life and be honest about it. And I always say to people, when you're doing this, if there's something that's private and personal and you don't want anyone to find out about it, or if you're doing it in a group activity, for example, if your wife is stressing you out or something, my wife is wonderful, I have to say that.
Just got to say
that. To name it as a food stuff you don't like, so it might be broccoli. I love broccoli, but something like that, so you can actually name it, but no one else, if they ever read it, will know. So stress goes into your container. And then you've got at the top, so there's a normal level of stress, and I've got another graphic in a moment. We've got time, the pressure performance curve. So we have a normal level of stress, and a normal level of stress is good. It strives us to overcome things. This is when our minds are most active. If we get too much, then we're going into tiredness and then eventually burnout. the stress fills up into our stress bucket, and when it gets to the top, we've got problems developing. We've got emotional snapping, pressure performance curve. So you see, it leads to burnout, and one burnout is actually recognized by the World Health Organization as a condition. So we need the right level of stress. We need to be able to manage our stress. So when our stress bucket overflows, this is when we have throwing stuff, crying, children will have tantrums, that kind of stuff. Even before that, so if you go back to the stress container, we've got the stress signature. So this is really important. So my stress signature, for example, I go to toilet more than normal. I swear a lot when I'm stressed. My sleep goes. I start fantasizing about electric SUVs like Audis that I can't afford, and I'd be too scared to have one parked outside my house anyway. But I know then when I'm looking at things I can't afford and stuff, I'm stressed, you know. So stress signature, recognizing your unique stress signature is important, and who's got your back, which is important as well. So my wife is fantastic. I've said that already, and I will forever say that. But if I start talking to her in a disrespectful way, if I start swearing in front of the children, she'll say, James, what's going on? And I'll be like, thanks. You know, we can have that conversation. So it's really important that you have that ability to have that with your work colleagues, with your partner, your significant other. So to keep our normal level of stress, we need to have, we've got the tap at the bottom, helpful coping strategies. These can be reading, writing, exercising, having a massage, going out into nature, whatever makes you happy, you know. And then unhelpful coping strategies. Classic unhelpful coping strategy, having a drink, you know, can be nice every now and again, can lead into a habit, even if it's a beer at the end of the day or a glass of wine. If that glass of wine isn't there, do you get angry? Do you get ratty? You know, helpful coping strategies can become unhelpful. You know, I love Olympic lifting. I go to the gym. I know when I'm really stressed, I will over exercise. I'll spend too long there. I'll injure myself. I'll be late for my next appointment. So, you know, we have to think about helpful and unhelpful coping strategies, eating unhealthy food, you know, that kind of stuff. So when you do this, this is really important to think about as well. Pandemic, you know, what have you lost because of the pandemic? You know, I don't go out shopping as much. I don't socialize as much anymore. You know, going out on a Saturday afternoon to the West End in London, something I used to do quite often. Now it's like, I think I've done it once in 3 years. And I did it recently just to take some trainers back that I bought online. And I was like, wow, this is great, you know. So it's really good to think about that. And also to do this in maybe in a month's time, in 6 months' time, see what you're procrastinating about, see what things in your stress bucket you could have taken out, see what helpful coping strategies you could have added, see what unhelpful ones you maybe could have taken away. And it's, I think it's really good to think about things that you used to like doing as well that you've stopped doing. I recently took up the guitar again after a few years. Love it. I can't put it down. But I know actually if I'm working on a chord progression that's really difficult, it might become an unhelpful coping strategy. So knowing that and when to put it down, and having a list and lots of different helpful coping strategies. So if writing doesn't do it for me, if I've got brain fog, I do a bit of music as well. I can't do that. Okay, I'll go and clean something. I'll go and cook something. I'll go and play with my kids. You know, I'll do whatever. And having that thing, so you've got these, because I think self-care is something that we don't learn. It's not something that's taught to us. We have to schedule it. We have to make time for it. We have to make sure we're getting enough self-care, and it shouldn't be seen as self-indulgent. You know, it's the old oxygen mask thing. We have to put on our oxygen mask first, but this is something we're not taught. For men, it can often be a macho thing, or, you know, so it's really actually really nice coming to the Therapy Expo, meeting yourself and Gary and all these big guys. You know, a lot of them are ex-army and that. But, you know, talking about self-care, talking about mental health, you know, getting involved in therapies, and it's really, really good. You know, it's really heartwarming to see that, because often it can be, you know, it's like, well, I can't do that. You know, my mates take the mickey out of me because I do a massage. And I'm really blessed that I can actually be a part of this, you know, and do it, because because for me as well, being around people who care about other people is part of self-care. You know?
This diagram, because often a diagram and allowing people to fill out boxes is a great way to get them talking and writing things down and kind of initiate conversations, and also make yourself think. Did you say this is available somewhere to print out and use?
It's on my website. I think I sent you a link for it on allaboutthemind.com resources, and then it's the first one, stress bucket. And there's a few questions on the other page to ask after you fill this in. Yeah. So, do I have evidence? And again, this can be a self-stress. Young people do this all the time. This is a great thing to do with kids, and you can actually do it. Get a physical bucket. Kids will often be like, "Oh, my hair's too short, my hair's too long." We can do this as adults. Actually, my hair started falling out. I've been stressing about that. Actually, what can you change? What can't you change? What do you need to accept? What needs my urgent attention? This is often really key, because often we can stress about things. Actually, that can wait. That doesn't have to be done now. And who can help me? Because often there are people that can help us, and we might think, "Oh, I can't ask them for this. I can't do that." And when actually they'd be happy to help.
Really great. Just taking the time to stop. If you can find the time to stop and maybe fill this out or talk it through with someone, you start, "I haven't got time to do this." Look, it'll take 5-10 minutes. Let's just sit down with this bit of paper and go through it. And like you say, suddenly you start realizing what's going on and noticing what's happening and what you can do to change it in time before it develops. Brilliant. Really useful. And of course, this is something which therapists can use themselves, and then maybe even offer out to clients and patients if they feel that it would be useful as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You're not telling them what to do. Once again, you're just giving you're giving autonomy, aren't you, to the client, to the patient, which is so important. Another thing we were doing with Dr. Gary Mendoza with behaviour change, they've got to be the ones who are going to change themselves. Otherwise, they're just going to keep coming back to you.
Yeah.
Great stuff. The performance curve. Can I bring that up again? Talk me a little bit through that. Are you okay? It's 9 o'clock now. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to add to your stress at all. It'd be ridiculous after tonight to actually.
I've got a packet of biscuits waiting for me in a minute.
Let's bring this up. Talk me through. I'm going to put it on the screen. If you listen to the podcast, and this is again an example where it might be worth going along to the YouTube channel and catching up with this, and because you'll see the graphics we're putting up on the screen. But James will talk us through what's on the screen now.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the pressure performance curve. And this is the sources from Williams, 1994. And basically, we've got performance on a vertical axis and level of pressure on a horizontal axis. Low performance comes with the minimum level of pressure, i.e., so if there's no stress, you're bored, you're not active, your brain's not working, you're not inspired, you're not doing a lot. You get average pressure and it's comfortable. You feel like, life's good. You kind of got something to do. It's great. When you start to get a bit more pressure, this is when you start to come into optimum performance, when you're solving problems, when you're really thinking about stuff, and you're in that stretch zone. And the peak is when you get in between stretch and strain. So this is really important, because once you start going into strain a bit more, that's when you get fatigue. That's when you get poor judgment, poor decision making. And then if you carry on, you're going to go into crisis, which is the maximum amount of stress. And that's exhaustion, serious health problems, breakdown, and burnout. So how do you stay in that stretch and comfort zone? Or the stretch zone is really good, is by knowing when to stop, by being able to. And I saw something in the chat about saying no. I need to stop. I need to have a massage myself. I need to relax. I need to say no, whatever it might be. It's recognizing when it's getting too much and being able to stop. Stress shouldn't be looked at as something that's always bad, because that's something that we wouldn't be here to race solving all these problems on this technology if we didn't have stress.
And once again, this diagram is beautiful, because we all know that if we find that precious time to stop and look at what we're doing, then we realize it, and we can see probably, especially there's probably a pattern. It's the same things. It's very rarely that you're just suddenly going into stress. It's probably something you've done throughout your adult life, if not before. So if you can take the time to look at this diagram and go, "Oh my God, I've done it again. I'm here," and bam, then you can make that change. But
I was in just very quickly. I was in a I was doing a training in an East London college, mental health training, and the safeguarding lead was there. It was a sixth form college, and the head of operations was there. And there was lots of teachers from this London borough, and the safeguarding lead and the head of operations, they're sitting there, and there's a common area on one side of the room, and there's towards the canteen on the other side. And there's all this noise. It's in between lockdowns. There's all these young people happy about being around other young people. They're big young people. And every now and again, the safeguarding lead would get up, and he'd go outside, and he'd say, put him down or put her down, and where are you supposed to be? And and then they'd all go off, and this kept going on. And then I started talking about stress. The safeguarding lead's a young guy. He goes, I don't get stressed. And he's like, I don't really get stressed. And I said, look, mate, I've been watching you all morning, and you've been on high alert like this. I said, you may not realise the amount of stress you're under, because this is your normal life. You can cope with it, you can deal with it, but the physiological and the psychological effects it's having on you are still having on you. I said, if there was someone here from Somerset or something like that, I said, they'd be hiding under the table, because it was like, I'm from Finsbury Park, and I was finding it a bit stressful being there. And that's a good example of how we don't recognise the actual stress that we're under. And that's why I think that's, for us as therapists, it's really important to know. And again, when we're dealing with clients, how's my stress bucket? Can I deal with this person now? Can I do that? And knowing that and saying, right, okay. And even when someone's engaging with us, to say, it's not maybe even to say anything. So knowing those boundaries.
Incredible. Some amazing pearls of wisdom there. We are now at 9:05, and I don't want to get into trouble with Mrs. James Chapman. I wouldn't want that happening to me at all. So we're going to sign out. If people want to get in touch with you, obviously we've got allaboutthemind.com.
Yeah. Allaboutthemind.com, and any listeners of the podcast, or anyone here now, or anyone actually watching on the YouTube, if you want to do one of my courses, you can use code STA136, it's all capitals, on any of the courses that are listed on the website, and you get 50% off.
If you're an STA member, of course, and you will be asked for your STA number, don't forget.
Yeah.
But you know what? STA, to become an STA member costs, I think these days, definitely still less than 50 quid, I think, isn't it, Gary? Correct me if I'm wrong. So you might find
insurance as well. And you know what? Being a member of the professional association, as you said, with safeguarding, with other concerns, this is like this really powerful part of community. I think it's so important to have peer support, supervision, be able to talk to people who can just listen to you and know actually what's going on, what you're dealing with.
Definitely. It's supposed to be what it's all about. Unfortunately, no. Well, if you find you're with a professional association which is just trying to sell you courses which happen to be put on by that same association, then you're missing out on what the association is supposed to be doing. And that's looking after you, being there to give you support, guidance if you feel alone. And that was Gary Benson. His whole thing, he started this because he didn't want any single soft tissue therapist out there to feel alone and not having any support from anyone, because that's how he felt at some stages in his career. So that's what it's all about.
It really is. It really. And you know what? I deal with a lot of professional associations, and some of them, they just want your money. They just want money, and that's what it shouldn't be about. So it's really nice to be here, and the offerings that you give and the time you give to your members is fantastic. Really
we appreciate that coming from you. That means an awful lot. And then on Instagram, you swap around a little bit. Maybe the name had gone, but on Instagram, you're at all_about_the_mind.
Yes,
that's right. All about the mind, but with underscores. But then Twitter, you're about the mind, aren't you? There's no all, I believe. I think on Twitter it's just about the mind. All must have gone. It's an annoying thing about social media. I'm pretty sure, because your logo comes up. I checked it. And then on Facebook, community groups as well. Things going on Facebook, is there? Yeah.
Facebook, All About the Minds on Facebook.
Fantastic. Yeah. Plenty of ways to get in touch with you.
Yeah. I find that hard. That's another thing in my stress bucket is social media, because I'm just not a media person. I'm not a selfie person. I taught 2 yoga trainings earlier on in the year, and I didn't do any social media for it. And I've been into private schools, and thankfully one of the teachers took pictures, because I was like, I've got to do that. And you have to do that. It's promotion, social media. This is for me, it's a big thing, having to post and sit and think, I'm actually knackered, but I've got to write about children's Mental Health Week, which is really important to me.
We're going to do a month. We're going to do a month on, because I think it causes a lot of stress, advertising and marketing, and so it's always a crossover. And if people are feeling that the advertising and marketing is filling up their bucket, how do you look at it? You said emptying the bucket, don't you?
Yeah. So
emptying the bucket, then that's something you could adjust, isn't it?
Yeah, what other self-care do you need? It's like, right, okay, I'm gonna do some social media, and then I'm gonna go for a walk or something like that, or go for a swim.
Right, magnificent. As always, people who did join us live, thank you so much. Brian Huxley, Catherine Reimer, and everybody else who shared your comments. Just a shout out for Catherine Reimer, who has, STA members will know, but has said she needed to take her business out of the equation to refocus on getting herself back on track, to recalibrate and see what she can do. Applause to you, Catherine Reimer. I know you tried for so long to make it work, but it wasn't. So I'm sure you'll be back, because you're one of these natural givers, aren't you? You're very altruistic and you like helping people and seeing people get better. So you're bound to be back one day. But yeah, as James so eloquently says, oxygen mask, you've got to stick it on yourself first, haven't you? You can't help other people if you're scrambling and you haven't got your own oxygen mask sorted out. So yeah, strength to you, Catherine. Well done on taking that decision. I'm sure it wasn't easy for you, and that sensation you're laying down clients, but good on you. Yeah, you've got to look after number one. Right, so and thank you for everyone listening to the podcast. If you listen to the podcast and you want to join in next week and be here in the community in the live lounge and ask questions, we will be back, like I say, on February the 21st, which will be episode 137 with Alistair Beverley of the LDphysio.com, LD standing for learning disability. And we'll be looking at the similarities, but also the important contrasts and differences between mental health problems and learning disabilities. And then also probably touching on the difference again with learning difficulties, because they are very much different and they can obviously intertwine. And I'm sure we'll be seeing how people with learning disabilities have an elevated chance of suffering from mental health problems as well, but it's not the same thing. And we have all sorts of problems with overshadowing diagnosis and things, and we'll be talking about that next week. But as far as today goes, thanks again, James Chapman from All About the Mind. Really appreciate your time, friend.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone there and everyone who's commented and listened.
Right, I'm going to shut down the live down now. James, if you can hang around, don't press any buttons. I'll say thanks to you again once we're off the air. But yeah, thanks very much everyone who joined us live. And if you'd like to come next week, then 8 o'clock on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. Take care of each other and yourself.